Good evening, everyone. Anyone that's on, it's author R. Weir, Randy. Hopefully, everybody's had a great day. I've got a wonderful guest on that I met at Left Coast Crime. And I liked on our website that it said that suspense with a bite, but it's not vampires, folks. So you're going to be disappointed if you're here to have vampires. But I have Jodi Burnett here with us tonight. Hi, Jodi. How you doing?
Hi, Randy. Good. How are you doing?
Doing great. It's been a busy few days for me, messing with my website and chatting with people remotely these days. So, you never can get anybody on a phone anymore, so it's all web-based chat.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But thanks for being on. We met at Left Coast Crime. We had a nice little put get together with you and Margaret Mishushima. I always mess up her last name, but I might have got
You got it right.
yeah, Kathleen Donnelly, and
Uh-huh.
we were all talking about dogs, which was fun.
It was fun. Yeah, we all write dog books with all a little bit different, all involving mystery and crime, but mine are more thrillers. Theirs are more mystery. Well, I don't know about Kathleen. Hers is kind of a mix, but yeah, so it's a lot of fun. It was so much fun to see everybody there.
Yeah, so we were sharing our dog pictures around. Everyone was showing off and telling stories about their dogs. So,
I know it's almost as bad as grandkids, right?
well, when your kids are older, I mean, you always like to brag about your kids anyway, but still, when they're older,
Right.
you may not brag as much as you did when they're younger, right? But yes, dogs are family, so we enjoy that. But thanks for being on. Tell us a little bit about yourself, all the important stuff people need to know about you.
Okay, gosh. I'm a Colorado native, so I was born and raised in Boulder, Colorado, and then I married my husband, and the next 8 years we spent in the Marine Corps. So I lived all around the world doing that. And then we came home to raise our kids. We had three kids while we were in the Marine Corps, and then a daughter when we were in Broomfield in Colorado. And I was a mom mostly, and then gosh, I'm sort of an serial entrepreneur, if you will. I've run several different businesses. My first business was a business called Horses Healing Hearts, where I did equine assisted therapy for at risk kids, which was the coolest work I've ever done, the most powerful and meaningful work for sure. I was a youth pastor for a while, and then my husband and I opened an Into Juice fruit smoothie place that we had for about 5 years. And so after that, my kids started growing up and moving away from home. And so I didn't really know what to do after that. And I was complaining to my husband about that and a lot. He said, honey, I think maybe you should write a book. And what I really think he meant was go write a book, 7 Easy Steps to Stop Harassing Your Husband with Your Empty Nest Syndrome. But I took him seriously and I wrote a book. It was women's fiction and ended up, it was certainly about a woman whose kids were moving away from home, but that was only like chapter one. So then I had to write the rest of the book and learn how to write. And in that process, fell in love with writing. And that's all she wrote. After that, I started writing crime thrillers.
That's interesting. He told you to go write a book. So, of all the things that he would tell you to do, is there a reason why? Did you have a love of books? Did you do journalism or something in your past?
I love to read and I love to tell stories. But I never ever even really thought about writing a story. That never really came across my radar. And I don't even think he meant writing a novel. Seriously, I think he meant, go share your experiences and maybe other people can resonate with that kind of a thing. But my love is fiction. So I think that's what happened. And then I got very involved in Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. I went to they at the time they had free programs every month, and I went to every single thing I could. Once I felt the courage to go, because I was so scared that I wasn't, really a writer, and so how could I? I would, they'd all know when I walked in the door. But
Written right on your face, right?
it was a big neon, but ends up wonderful people, and I realized just exactly how much I had to learn, which the learning curve of becoming a writer is pretty big, but I have an incredible imagination that I've always had, and so I fell in love with it, and here I am.
So I was reading on your website that you like to ride horses and that you complain about your cows, which I thought
Every
was
day.
funny So what is it about those poor cows? And do they get turned into steaks if they're bad or whatever? Or
They get turned into steaks whether they're good or bad.
that might be
So
why,
there's
right? They
that.
know that the end is coming, so they better
They
cause
should
trouble.
behave.
Huh?
Yeah, they're just cows are very destructive, and they don't really like to pay attention to fencing and that kind of thing. So it's just if they're not out at least once a month wandering around to the neighbors, I don't know. It's just they're constantly causing trouble. Whereas the dogs and the horses don't. they're they're much more pleasant. So yeah, I complain about them. My husband loves the cows, so we'll keep them.
How many cows do you normally have?
Well, we just moved up here. I live in Divide, Colorado, and we just moved up here from Elizabeth. And in Elizabeth, it's more plains. We had more flat acreage without a lot of trees, and so we usually had about 10 pair, so cow calf pair there. But here we just have three. We have a mama, a calf, and this crazy steer that is the one who drives me the most crazy.
So not a lot of room for them to roam and for
There's
pasture.
not so much. We live absolutely right dab in the middle of the forest. So there's not a lot of flat land with there's, room for them, but it's more on a hill and lots of trees and things like that. So, and when we moved here, the fencing that we had was smooth wire, and cows don't pay any attention to smooth wire at all. So we need to bolster it with two more strands of barbed wire, but that's just a big process. So we'll get
They
there.
just go right through the wire
You just
otherwise.
walk right through it. Yeah.
Wow.
And then who knows where they are in the forest. Like, they come back, I guess, when they get thirsty, but if we don't catch them leaving, we might not see them for a couple days, which is a little aggravating.
Do you ever have any issues with people rustling your cattle, stealing them?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Who
Oh,
knows
they
what
just
happens
wander away, right?
if they just wander away. All of our neighbors know to keep an eye out for them, but yeah,
I
so
guess you need
far.
to GPS chip them, huh?
Right, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Just a little Apple tag on the.
So, and then it says here, I saw you that you like to watercolor paint as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, what do you like to paint? And just anything, whatever
Oh,
you look out the window and you see, or is it something from your imagination?
yeah, I like to do landscapes mostly. I love to paint aspen. That's really fun. I do a lot of different kinds of things. So I paint watercolors and I do stained glass and I quilt. Um, I do just about any kind of crazy craft. I just got a, you might not even know what this is, but I just got a Cricut, which is like a
Oh yeah,
cutting machine,
it's
and
one
I'm
right
learning.
next to me. My
Oh,
wife
okay. So
uses one.
you know right what it is then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she
So
makes
I'm
stuff
just
to make T-shirts and to put on
very
her
good. Did she
bags.
make that
And
one?
what's that?
Did she
No,
make
this
the
is
one you're
actually
wearing?
an older one, but my
Okay.
new book, which she did put that one on because she's got a heat press and all that. So,
Yeah, I saw your tattooed. Is that real? Let me see.
oh yeah,
It's
I just got
real.
it. It's still
Wow.
sore because it's only I just got it just last Thursday. So
That's
I
so
just
so you're starting a new canine series?
yeah, that's my first book. The
Awesome.
first book in my third series is a canine with a
That's fantastic.
retired canine and a retired Westminster police officer. So
Oh, very cool. Going
yeah,
local. That's cool too.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
That's awesome.
I did the Westminster Citizens Police Academy, and I talked to police officers and got to see their canines and stuff, and that kind of fueled the idea. It fueled the idea for several of my books, but
Yeah.
this one for sure. There were some other books that I did because we were talking about the DA and fentanyl, so I had a fentanyl book,
Hmm. Yep.
serial killer book. I talked to a judge and the DA also, and Adams County Courthouse and all that stuff. So yeah,
Cool.
it was a lot of fun. But no, yeah, she's got a cricket and that thing's kind of going away
Well,
next
I'm
door.
just learning.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll come talk to your wife. She can
yeah,
give me some
yeah,
lessons.
yeah. Well, she's been learning on the fly as well. But yeah, she's doing stuff. We're doing Branson, and she made some labels for all my three have logos for all three of my book series, and we put them on some mugs for a raffle
Oh,
and
that's
some other stuff
fantastic.
as well.
Yeah.
She puts them on bags we give away when people buy multiple books and stuff like that. So yeah, but she wanted one years ago, and I was like, "Oh, you don't need it, you don't need it," and I finally gave in to her and got it
And
as a
now
Christmas
you're,
present.
oh, that's nice. And now you're glad you did because you're benefiting too.
I figured out a way to write it off, right? So
There you go.
it's all author stuff. So yeah.
Yes, exactly. Good for you.
So so you said he told you one day to start writing. So who are some of the authors that you like to read? Who were some of the people that inspired you through the years? That when you
Well, I've always loved, funnily, I love spy thrillers. So I love, when I grew up reading Robert Ludlum, like the real Robert Ludlum, not the
oh yeah,
new guy who writes under his title. Yeah, I just
got some back
loved
here
that.
with the Born Ultimate Ball of Born series, the original three. Yeah.
And aren't those so good? I
Oh
try
yeah.
to tell people they're so much better. I mean, I love the new like the Bourne movies were great, but
Yeah.
they're not the classic Ludlum for sure.
Right.
So that's what I grew up on. Currently, like Mark Cameron, who writes, he wrote some titles under. I'm gonna my brain just stopped.
Well, Mark does Jack Ryan stuff now, if I remember right. Right.
Yeah, well, he did for
Hmm.
like several titles, and
Hmm.
then now I think I I'm not sure. I think Greeny's doing it now, but I'm not 100% sure if it's him. But
Well, there's a
anyway,
bunch of
Mark's
different
not.
ones in those series. I think they've got multiple
Yeah,
authors
yeah.
doing the.
And Mark has a U.S. Marshal series that takes place up in Alaska, and I love that. And I have two U.S. Marshal series, so um, I really like to kind of read those and see what he's doing and checking. Of course, he has the credentials because he's a retired U.S. Marshal, so that's pretty cool. Or deputy U.S. Marshal.
Really, I didn't know Mark
Yeah.
was. He
Hmm.
was at Bouchercon, and I
Yeah.
talked to him just a little bit. He was on a panel of authors
Uh-huh.
uh, who had written for authors who had passed.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he was up there with Reed Farrell Coleman, which Reed I've had Reed on the show, and Reed took
Nice.
over the Jesse Stone series for a while. He did like 5 novels. Mark was talking about the Jack Ryan stuff that he did.
Hmm.
Um, Andrew Child was there, Lee Child's brother, and he's taking over the Reacher series, which I got to talk to him as well and get a
Oh,
picture with
that's
him. So,
cool.
and a couple others, I'm forgetting the other two, but yeah, it was. I didn't realize he was a U.S. Marshal. Maybe he mentioned that, and
Yeah.
it slipped my mind since that was last year. But
Yeah.
so he has
Yeah.
lots of experience.
He has all the experience, and he's such a generous person, and he's always willing to, you know, answer my questions on the sly.
Well, I got to write his name. I keep forgetting to. I got to add him to my list of authors, and because I'm sure he would.
Absolutely. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure he won't remember me. I asked several questions at that panel, but
You never know.
yeah,
Also, I love to read that she's a romantic suspense author, but I love to read Sandra Brown. I think that her suspense is spot on, and I just really enjoy her style of writing. So that's who I read a lot of now. And oh gosh,
and did
I
you read a
read
lot
all the
when
time.
you were in school, like in high school and stuff like that? A big reader.
I started really reading a lot, and it's kind of funny. I didn't read as a child very much. I think I struggled. I don't know if I'd have never been diagnosed or anything, but I think I might have a little bit of a perception issue, like a slight dyslexia. And I
Mm.
didn't really like to read. I love to be read to. But I had a teacher in eighth grade, Mrs. Scornavacchio, who she just turned me on to reading. I don't know. She suggested that I read the book called Christie, which you may have heard of. It's a classic. It's about a young woman who becomes a teacher, and then she goes and teaches in the hills in Tennessee, like somewhere around in the 30s or 20s or something. So it's like they're still riding on on a carriage. She goes in the mail carriage, the mail cart that goes up the mountain, and that's how she gets up there. But it was just a fantastic story, and I just it just opened the world of reading to me. And then my dad was an avid reader, and although he read a lot of Michener, which I don't have the patience. He was reading Alaska, it's like this big, and you
Yeah.
know 10 chapters on description. But my dad loved that, but he's the one who turned me on to Ludlum, and gosh, good stuff.
Yes, I always enjoyed Robert Ludlum, and yeah, some of those classics were always
Hmm.
good. So what was the first thing you ever wrote that really,
Well, book.
after your husband told you go and write? What?
Well,
It, it,
yeah, it's a book called Letting Go. I've taken it down. It's not in publication right now. It's still out there, but it's not. in publication right now, primarily because it's women's fiction and I don't write women's fiction. So I wanted to kind of keep my genre clean. But it took me probably 5 years to write that book because there's so much to learn. It's writing a book. There's no how do you write a book class really, that takes you from the beginning to the end. And there's a lot of just going and learning different aspects of writing to include and trial and error and learning how to do that. So that was the first book. But then after I wrote that book, and I thought it would kind of be a one and done thing, but then I just kept thinking, oh gosh, I'd really love to write some more, and that's when I started my first series, which is the Flint River series, and it's crime that happens on and around a ranch in Montana, and it's each book is three different brothers' story and the crime that they get involved in, and so and funnily, each of my series leads on to the next series. So all of the books are connected, but they're also standalones. You don't need to read them in order necessarily. The relationships are obviously linear, but the crime aspect of each book stands on its own.
So the three brothers. So each of the three books is three different brothers. Are the other brothers also in the other books, or is it like just from that brother's point of view in each one?
It's the brother's point of view in each one, but they of course cross over because they're
Yeah.
brothers. But in the third book, the brother is an FBI agent. He's been estranged from the family, so he doesn't really come into play until the very end of the second book, and then the third book is his. And then he gets lost this is actually how I started writing about dogs. He gets lost in a blizzard in Idaho, and he's, like I said, he's an FBI agent. So they bring in an FBI canine team to help find him. And I loved writing that dog. That dog was Baxter, and he's a bloodhound, and he's the first dog in my FBI canine series. And I loved writing him so much, and I thought, I just need to create this mythical FBI canine unit in Denver. And so I did. So that's my next series, was the FBI canine series. And each book in that series it's a different crime, and there's different dogs in. I think there's a little bit of crossover in body count, but so you have Baxter, and then you have a lab and a Belgian Malinois, and then you have another Belgian Malinois, and then another Belgian Malinois, because they're awesome.
They
they
are.
do, they're incredible police dogs. So
Yeah.
I kind of went that track. So, but those are all FBI cases that take place in and around Denver.
Oh, so they're all Denver based.
Yeah, they're all Denver based.
And you said you lived in Broomfield for a while. I live in
Hmm.
Westminster, so
Yeah,
Broomfield is just a stone's throw away from that.
that's right.
Probably Broomfield was a lot smaller then, since that was probably a few years back. It's grown.
Yeah, well, yeah, we raised our kids there, and then we moved down to Elizabeth in 2014. So
What high school did they go to?
they went to Legacy High School.
Legacy. Okay, yeah, because
Yeah,
Broomfield High School is just like half mile from our house.
right.
So so Denver. So the first series you were talking about, the Flint Rivers, where does that mostly take place at?
Well, so there's a little town that's called Flint River, but it's based on the town of Phillipsburg in Montana, which is the most amazing little town. It's this little tiny town, and when I went there to visit, it was their 150-year anniversary, and they had redone all the storefronts on the main street to look like it would have in like the 1800s. And so it looked like this, Western town, and it just caught my imagination. So I changed the name of it because I changed the town a little bit, and I needed to make different things. I needed different streets, and I added, different things. Like I think I put a senior home in at one point, and different people lived in different areas. But basically, it's the town's main street. I had to put a courthouse at the end of the street, which doesn't exist there. I'm sure they have a courthouse, but it doesn't exist where I wanted it to be.
Right.
But they do there's some mines and things up in the mountains, and those are really there. They have sapphire mines, and it's a lot of fun. And there's an old soda fountain in the town. It's a cool town. It's kind of maybe a little touristy, but it's great fun. It's a little tiny. It's between I'd have to look at a map. It's between Missoula and I can't remember the town. There's another mining town that's just south of there. But if you kind of go down, you'll find it. But it's a fun little town. So that's the Flint River series.
So 3 books in that series. So that series is complete, right? You don't plan on having any more?
Well, well, so there's an epilogue, a Christmas epilogue to the series, and then also I do have a fourth book that needs to be written. It's takes place in Scotland actually, so it's kind of a carryover from the third book. The love interest for this FBI agent is Scottish, and she's going to try to find her mother. Her mother is missing, so they need to go find her. And she's still lost. She's been lost for several years. But
Yeah.
I did go on this really cool personal writing retreat to Scotland 2 summers ago, and I went over there for a month by myself, and I stayed in a little town called Pitlochry, and just a quintessential little cottage town in Scotland. It was amazing. And so that's why I did a lot of the research for that book, and I have that. I just haven't gone backwards to write it yet. So I keep moving forward on my on my series. But I do plan to. Yeah.
So are
And then
all
it'll
three
be
brothers
complete.
going to have a equal share in that fourth and final book, or is it really just going to be the third brother?
They'll probably just show up, but they won't have equal share. It's definitely the third brother and his wife that are going to be in Scotland. So
And then the FBI Canine series, you've got the 4 right now. Is
mhm.
there going to be
That's
more in that
as
series?
far as I know, that's a complete series.
Yeah.
You never know. You can never say never.
Well, if you're, are your books, are you self-published or are you have publishers?
I'm indie published, so
You're indie,
I
so
can
you can do whatever
do
you want.
whatever I want.
Well, you could. Yeah. I kind of like that myself. I'm
Me
an
too.
indie too, and I enjoy being able to choose what I want
Yeah.
when I want, and nobody tells me when it can come out, and no deadlines other than the ones that maybe the fans.
Right.
Sometimes they're going, "I wish you could write faster." I was like,
Right.
well,
Or they ask for that next book in the series. Well,
yeah,
so and then I'm jumping ahead, but the following series, my third series, is the U.S. Marshal. Well, it's a U.S. Marshal Canine series. That grew out of the FBI Canine series in that the fourth book, the protagonist in the fourth book, he's from a ranch up in Wyoming, and his little sister is the protagonist throughout it's the Tin Star Canine series. She's the protagonist
this one.
through yeah throughout this entire series, and her dog Renegade. So but she is the sister to this FBI agent. And now I'm working on my 20th book, which comes after Spec Ops. And it's called Detonate. And Detonate, Caitlin, the protagonist, is going down to Denver. She becomes a U.S. Marshal. She's not a U.S. Marshal in the beginning, but she becomes a U.S. Marshal, or I should say deputy U.S. Marshal. And then in Detonate, she travels down to Denver to work with her brother Logan, and they're trying to find different explosives potentially at DIA. So, and they're working, of course, with ATF and the FBI and Homeland and all those guys. So it's just fun. It's fun just to bring them back and visit the old characters from a different series. And and again, you don't have to read it that way, but I know readers who read them all, and they really appreciate revisiting the characters from before. So it's kind of fun.
So yeah, you've got 10 in that series so far.
Yeah, well, two of them, if you look at that picture again,
Yeah.
two of them are ebook only. So the ones that look like paperbacks,
Yes.
those come in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. The ones that look like ebooks, those are qualified at this point as only in ebook. Carnival is ebook and audio. And yeah, so we're working on getting all those together. But those are just novellas, so they're like
Oh,
mid-series
yeah.
novellas.
Yeah.
You don't have to read them, but it makes it fun. It's just like little side stories that are kind of short, little snippets.
So did you decide not to do to put them in paper just because they were shorter?
Yeah, well, I may put them in paper on my shop. So I have my own. bookshop online, and on there I can do novellas. Amazon, I don't think will print them if they're that short. I think they have
They
a
have to be
limit.
certain amount. I've got one novella that's printed in this one, and it was Case of the Invisible Souls, and it was 90 some pages. So I think there's a limit, but it's very thin. So
Yeah,
you have the cover. You can't put the name on the spine of the cover and stuff.
right. I have one. So this is the prequel to my U.S. Marshal thriller series, Forged, and it's same. So
Right.
it's a novella, but I did a special print run on that because I had a launch party for that series, and so I thought, oh, that'd be fun to give as a gift for the people who came to the party. So that's what I did. And I could do it for the other ones. I just haven't done it yet, but it would be kind of fun.
Yeah, and on this one, I actually added I have a short story as well. So I have a novella plus a short story, so it's
Oh,
both in
nice.
one. So I mean, you could put both your novellas in one book, and that would certainly be big enough. So
Yeah,
it's
that's a good
good.
point because this is only 60 pages. So I know, yeah, but if I did them together, that's a really good idea, Randy.
Yeah, you could
I'll have to
do
think
that as
about that.
well. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
and
great
I don't
idea.
charge for my advice, so
Good thing.
because most
I'll have to
people want their
Venmo you.
money back if I did. So um, anyway, so yeah, so that series is still continuing. You're going to have more, I'm assuming.
Yeah, definitely. I have no plans in sight for ending my Renegade series at all.
And
That's
the
I
K
just
name in
love.
that is that a Malinois as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the marshals, and I love the freedom that they have in their jurisdiction, and I can really play with where they go. They can, they don't really have a jurisdiction like most law enforcement agencies do, and so they can kind of travel around, and also even to include going in other countries in certain circumstances. And so, because of that, I decided to take a character that's frequently in my Tin Star series, that works with Caitlin. His name is Dirk Sterling, and he needed his own series. I mean, his name is Dirk Sterling, right? He needed his
Dirk,
own
right?
series.
Yeah.
There he is. Yeah.
Yep.
So I thought about stopping this series after Witsec, but as I get to the end, I'm about 90% through a book when another idea blossoms in my head, and so I next spring I'll come out with Pursuit is the next one in that series, but I haven't even started working on that yet, other than just general ideas.
Well, I mean, if they're still there, I mean, I ended one of my. I have a series with a former U.S. Marshal, my Divine Devil series, and I only did 4 books in it. And I had a couple of people who've read it, and they were mad. One lady, she came to one of the events, and she's giving me the eyeball, and she was mad I ended the series. And it's like, well, it's just I wrapped everything up. Now,
Sometimes they end.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, I
that's okay.
could revisit it. Something might bring him back, but you just never know. And
Yeah.
the idea is there, and I wanted to go back to writing something else, and then I started this third new series, which will be, maybe multiple books.
It's
We'll see.
Well, yeah, and it's fun because you can't really control what your imagination decides to do, and you get lit up about a project, and so off you go.
So yeah, so U.S. Marshals and dogs. So you've got dogs, right? You
I
got any
do.
Belgian Malinois at home?
I do not, and I really don't want one.
Yeah.
My Roddy, who's I have two Rottweilers, and I
Yes.
have my puppy. She's just 2. Well, she was 2 in March. She's already enough to handle that. I mean, she's just all puppy in a big, huge body. So
Well, Malinois are very high
they're
energy. I mean,
high,
they
high
you know
energy. Yeah. Well, I heard that the guys down at the army base down here, when they take their dogs out, they take them, they'll drive their ATVs, and they'll go on a 10-mile run. And when they get back, then they start training the dogs because the dogs are not worn out.
Yep.
Like, they're ready to go. And it's, gosh, so I don't have that kind of energy, but I think that I've heard they're great dogs, but they're very smart. And so if they're bored, they can get into a lot of trouble. So you have to really engage their mind and their body, but There's nothing like watching the training. I watched that's my guilty pleasure on Instagram is to watch the training. I have different dog training videos, and it's always those, the military or the, police doing dog training with their Malinois, and it's just like, and also Dutch Shepherds. Those are super cool too,
Hmm.
but they're a little stockier, a little heavier. So depends on what the job is that they're doing, but they're pretty cool.
So you haven't been to watch Kathleen do any of her dog stuff?
I have only seen Kathleen's dogs one time. We did a joint author talk and signing at the Tattered Cover down in Littleton,
Hmm.
and she brought her black lab, and
Right.
so that's the only time I've been up there. Kathleen lives, I think, up in
Like
somewhere near
Wellington.
Fort
She's
Collins.
way
Yeah,
up
yeah, somewhere
north there.
north,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I hardly ever see her unless we see each other online. But it's a lot of fun. But yeah, no, I did most of my research like you did. I went to the Douglas County Citizens Academy, and that was really awesome. I mean, it was right at the tail end of COVID too, so it was kind of like they were really trying to get people to come in, and so
Right.
they had this incredible program. They continue to have a great program with alumni too, but they had the canine, and then they just did a lot of different scenarios that we got to play act in, with our little plastic guns and things like that. But it was
Yeah.
just really, really great. They're a fantastic law organization. Also in Elizabeth, the sheriff of in Elbert County there, he had 20 years canine experience in Phoenix before he came to be a sheriff in Elizabeth, and he was building a canine program there at the time. When I knew him, he only had one dog. I think they have two dogs now, but they were starting from nothing, and there's no funding for that. So I'm really proud to say that my readers helped me. We did a GoFundMe and helped to provide them with a bite suit, full on bite suit, for their
Oh, that,
program.
no.
So that was really cool. And then he recommended so my husband and I went down to Phoenix for the National Police trials, the National Police dog trials. And oh my gosh, those they are incredible, and just the training and the things that they do. And it was so I have a million pictures and some really cool video of these dogs that just are learning. Some of them are still just, in the new stages of learning, and they get too excited and things. And
Right.
then you get these dogs that are just spot on. They're really cool. So that was an incredible weekend to really, get to see some of these dogs. And you can meet some of them. Not all police dogs are dogs you can pet.
Right.
So, and some of them, they want to be ambassadors, and so they get them out and with the people, and they're good dogs to pet and meet, and the kids can pet them and everything else. But I went and did an interview with the Castle Rock Police Department, and their dogs are bite dogs. So they were so gracious. They spent 2 hours with me answering all sorts of crazy questions. But when we went to meet their dogs, the dogs had to be behind a glass door. They're like, we can't let
Right.
you because they will bite you. Like I was like, okay. And so it was two different officers, and one had a Belgian, and the other one had a Dutch Shepherd. And he was really cool looking, but I wouldn't want him chasing me. If you're a criminal and some policeman says, I have a dog and he will bite you, just give yourself up.
I know. We talked about that with the canine, and they're like, "There's no way." It's like it's like you're not. You think you're going to hide from them, and you're not.
You're not.
And they'll go in there, and Westminster, and I don't know if Douglas County or the others that you talked to, and I think I mentioned this when we were having a little dog talk, is they don't train their dogs to release.
Right.
They pull them off. So once they have a bite, they don't let go.
Yeah.
They have to pull them off. There's no release command that they use in Westminster. They pull it off your arm. And if you've ever seen them bite with those suits on, and they're thick, and
Yeah.
they can feel their jaws even on those thick pads. And I can't even imagine being bitten just on your arm by
Just on
one.
your skin. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
no way.
me either. Just give up. Right.
I surrender. I mean, I would never be in that situation anyway, but
Right.
still.
Right. I know. I
Nope.
know.
I don't care what you do. You're not gonna get away from them either, because if they've got
Yeah.
your scent, they're
Yeah.
gonna find you too.
Yeah, the saddest thing is that a lot of times dogs get injured when when they're going after them. And so, and a lot of different, it depends on the state and it depends on the funding of the different counties, but a lot of dogs are considered, officers and they have the gear that they need, but a lot of dogs aren't. And so they all need to have safety jackets and, safety vests and that kind of thing. And they don't all. And that's really too bad. But even if they do, they can still get really injured if they get shot and, a criminal running away if they have a gun, they're going to shoot at the dog. But, so you see
Well,
some of those sad
and they
stories.
do I mean, when I was researching my book, you can go to websites and see a long list of dogs who've died in the line of duty, and
Yeah.
they usually get full honors, just like a regular fallen
Yeah.
officer.
Right. And I think they should.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of cases, they go in to save the officer's life. They
Right.
go into places where it's not safe for them to go into, and it's a sad thing. And I know Westminster, they told me it's like $5,000 to $10,000 for the dogs they get. They get them from overseas because
Yeah.
they're not been as inbred. They get them from Belgium and
Hmm.
places like that. They're Malinois because they use all Malinois
Yeah.
at Westminster, and it's not a cheap thing. And then, of course, there's the
No.
training as
Right.
well,
Right.
which is constant, just like anything
Hmm.
else.
Yeah.
I was amazed, and when I saw that, I go, I got to have a dog series. And my dog was a dog who got injured, so they retired him. He got his
Okay.
knee messed up, so that's how he was only like 4 or 5. And they said that was the other thing they told me is a lot of times 4, 5, 6 years if they get that much, they're lucky because they get
Yeah.
so beat up.
Yeah.
Well, so they're constantly training new ones as well. But the officer had trained the dog. So since he retired, this is, well, we'll give you the dog as well, which
Oh,
they
that's
also
nice.
told that they do sometimes in Westminster too. When the
Yeah.
dogs retire, they'll give the officer the opportunity to take the dog.
Yeah. There's a lot of different methods for that. So sometimes I talked to a canine officer in Centennial, and he was saying that he has his dog 24/7. He has it with his dog is home with his family, so it's a friendly dog. But when the dog is ready to retire, he has to purchase the dog, but they'll purchase it just for $1. But there has to be an actual legal
Right.
purchase. And so just funny things like that happen, that are fun those are kind of little tidbits that are fun to add in books. And like you said, that's not true across the board. It's just different counties have
Well,
different
it might be a
rules.
liability too, the transfer of
Yeah.
ownership.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a dog.
Well, and
So if
it's
the
a
dog happens
government
to hurt
issue
somebody,
and yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
that
city
too.
doesn't get
Hmm.
sued. Yeah,
Yeah.
they got to cover
I'm sure
themselves.
that's it.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yes, it's a thing, and sometimes they're able to transition. I'm sure it's a struggle as well to home life if you got kids
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously they're still wound up, but they're older and they're beat up. And I know
Yeah.
we were in Georgetown this last year. We went up there for the Georgetown Christmas, which we do usually every year,
Nice.
and they were walking around with a retired Malinois, and it was the sweetest, loving little thing. I walked up to it, and it just leaned up against me. So, but he said he was 8, 9 years old, I think.
Yeah.
So older
Oh,
on the older side, but didn't have a problem with any people. Nothing, no muzzle
yeah.
on him, anything.
It just depends on the dog and their job.
Yeah,
So, like we were talking about bite dogs, you don't mess around with those dogs, but you can have dogs that that isn't necessary. Like they will do that, but maybe they're drug sniffers and that's more their job or whatever. But I saw a documentary one time, and this guy was showing that he had this. It was a Malinois, and he was playing with the kids in the yard, and he was just this great family dog. But as soon as this officer put his uniform on, the dog snapped into it was work time,
work time.
and
Yeah,
that was it. Like
sure.
and it was just I love stuff like that. It's just they're so smart.
Yeah, it's kind of like when it's dinner time around here. My dogs know it. Yeah, one jumps in the air. Our lab will jump. I mean, 9, 10 feet in the air, waiting for her food, just up and down and up and down. I'm like, she's getting older. I'm worried she's going to break a hip one of these days.
Right,
I mean, I should be the one that's going to break a hip sooner than her, but 'cause I'm
right.
getting older. But I
Well, if you were
worry.
jumping up and down for your dinner, you might.
So usually, uh, don't get that excited about food, but yeah, she loves her food. So we talked a little. All your books. I counted 20 on your website. I think you said you might have a few more, and I think you give a few free books if people sign up for your newsletter as well.
Uh-huh.
And are you a pantster or are you a plotter or do you sit somewhere in between? I always like to ask everyone that.
Yeah, I am a solid plotter. I
I would have guessed the other way.
imagine you what? You would have
I
guessed
would
the
have
other
guessed you
way?
were a pantster just the way you talked before.
That's funny. I guess, I mean, my imagination where I'm doing the sort of mind map and all of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, I think everybody's probably a combination of both on some level, but once I get the idea, I honestly can't even imagine writing suspense without having it plotted out. I don't.
Yeah.
Now I write scenes in my outline. So after I get a plot that, or an outline, then I write a full outline with scene, like paragraphs for a scene. But as far as like the dialogue and that kind of thing, that can mess me up because it could go completely a different direction and then I have to sort of recover because you I always laughed when writers said, "Oh, my characters do what they want," and I'm like, "Oh, that's so silly. They do what they want." And it's the strangest thing. I mean,
Mhm.
they become real people that are having a discussion in your head and sometimes it doesn't go the way you think. And yeah, at one time I have a editor and she's like, "I'm not really liking this character right now." I'm like, "Me either. He was being a jerk." He redeemed himself later, but he did it. I didn't do it.
You didn't kill him off later though, because he
I
was a
never
jerk.
killed
Huh?
him off. I never killed him off. Not yet, anyway. He's he's the husband now of my main character in the Tin Star series. But you never know. I won't ever kill the dog. I promise that. But I'm not going to promise that I won't kill people.
Well, and I can tell I tell you from experience, killing a dog is a bad idea because I did do that in
Yeah,
books, and
yeah,
people
that's
were
not a good
really up.
idea.
Some people were less upset than others, but some people were like, "I won't even read your stuff anymore because you killed a dog
Yeah.
off." Like, well, I killed humans off,
I
but
know, they don't care
I don't
about
care
that,
about
but the
that.
dog, yeah, and I've even just had my dog get injured because, of course,
Yeah,
his life's in danger all the time, and, these are really bad criminals,
right.
and people don't like that either, but it's like, well, he's injured, but he got better, and he gets better in the book, so, but I have people who will ask me, email me or ask me on Facebook, "I'm just found your books, but I need to know before I start. Do you ever kill the dog?" Because they don't even want to get invested. Because I
Right.
mean, well, it's a 9-book series at this point with the 2 novellas, and I get it, but I can promise that, and I promise there's also justice in every book, and mostly happy endings, sometimes cliffhangers.
Well, I'm a big Robert B. Parker fan. I read all the Spencer series, and he has a dog, Pearl, and they've actually had to put the dogs down a few times. They've had three different Pearls now through the whole series.
Oh,
Always reading every time they get the dog, it says Pearl again, but they always the dog gets old. So the dog actually ages in the series. So do you imagine that at all in your series with your book, especially your long book, your 10 book series?
yeah. Well, I do a book. I do in my series. There's about 3 books a year. Like I mean, it's like there'll be one in the fall, one in early spring, and one in the summer. So 3 books take a year. So, but yeah, I sort of just don't talk about that a little bit. It's kind of like Bosch, right? Like, how old is that man?
Well, we got cancer in the books now, so it's like, is Michael Conley going to kill him off? It's like, he did smoke for a lot of years, so
Yeah.
and he always would go back to it and stuff. But yeah, it seems like in books a lot of times they don't age. Obviously, James Bond. How long's James Bond
Right. Exactly.
been? And the same with some of the others. So a lot of times authors don't necessarily age their books, and that was even came up I think in one of the panels, and people were talking, and he says, yeah, every year, every my book that my characters are getting old. I think Manuel Ramos told me that
Okay.
that
Yeah.
his characters actually have gotten
Hmm.
older in his series as well. So uh,
Well, I have some kids in that 10 Star series, because it's a family. It's sort of a family saga also on the sort of side, like there's the
mhm,
crime, but the family,
right.
that lives on the ranch is there and all that stuff takes place. So there's 2 kids right now and there's about ready to be a third one. Well, kids you can't avoid. like you can pretend like adults stay the same age, but kids have to get older. So
Right.
I'm probably painting myself into a direction there unintentionally, but I probably have to. They have to
Heaven
get a little
forbid.
older,
Heaven forbid that happens to us, right? We don't get older
right?
either, right?
We at least don't feel like we're getting older.
I should start dyeing my hair so everyone. So, are you a diligent writer? Do you write every day? Are you pretty disciplined?
I'm in and out of phases. For a while, I was really cranking out the books, like for a year. And so at that point, I had to write a minimum of like 25 to 3,000 words a day, every day. Um,
Three
now I'm
books a year
kind of,
is a lot.
pardon?
3 books a year is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. It can be done, but you can't miss a day. I mean, that's so,
No.
and that was just really, I love the writing part, but it was very stressful. And I just sort of like felt like I was putting my life on hold a little bit. So I'm taking it back a little bit. Just I'm going to write 2 books a year, which is still not laughable, but it's a lot less work. And I'm having a hard time throttling back. So I either don't do it at all, or so it's like I'm trying to find my balance. But I normally write about 1,000 to 1,500 words a day in the morning, and that's kind of what I'm doing. And then the whole editing process can be not quite so frantic. So I'm hoping it'll work. I'll let you know.
Well, you get up in the middle of the night and you sleepwalk and you start typing, right? So, because it's always
Just muscle
running through your
memory
brain. Yeah, it's always running through your brain. It'd be nice because
for
you could
sure.
write while you're sleeping. So, about
Right.
how big are you? How many words are your books?
They're not terribly long, about 60 to 65,000 words. So
Oh, too
they're,
bad.
smaller book, quick read.
Yeah, I was just thinking of how many words. Because
Yeah.
I was doing two. I only did one last year because I was starting this new series, and when you start a new series, there's a little more
It's a
involved.
whole new thing. Yeah.
Don't know the
You're
characters as
starting a
well.
whole new world. Yeah.
Yeah, so everything is different. So that one took me a little bit long, but the previous years I'd done 2 a year, and a lot of my books run 120 to 150,000
Yeah.
words. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of words. But I'm a streak writer. I write, and then I get drained, and I have to stop,
And then crash.
and then I
Yeah.
pick up again. Yeah. So, but I'm not as diligent as you are. I wish I was sometimes. I spend time messing with my website like I did the last few days, which gives me an
Ugh.
excuse. But so you obviously you've talked to a lot of you've seen canines. You've talked to Mark about U.S. Marshals. So where do those ideas come from? Just from are they always floating around in your head? Do you see stuff on the street and you go, "Oh, that makes a good story"? I mean, how is it all that work for you?
Yeah, all of those things, right? I think we pull as writers from everything that we come across. There's, you might have news, and then there's a true crime show that you watched, and then I really like to go look at the top 100 most wanted in the U.S. Marshals Most Wanted, and look at what are these guys that they're chasing down? What are they doing? And kind of add that to the big pot of things that I come up with, and like just the news. A lot of times the news has a lot of interesting ideas, and you know, but I do like to read the Marshall reports. I just think it's important to, in as much as it's fiction, it's important to get it right and to try to be as close to authentic as you can. Um, I, my last book, Spec Ops, is my character. Just she's going to try to be in the SOG unit, which is special operations group,
Mhm.
and so, and I mean, she's got this incredible dog, and she's this great deputy marshal, and so she's applying for SOG, and she has this sort of trial time period. Well, I asked Mark. I said, "So, Mark, do you know anybody in the SOG unit who I could talk to?" And he goes, I know some guys in SOG," and then he goes, "But they're not going to want to talk to you." I was like, "Come on." But the U.S. Marshals really fly under the wire. They are involved in everything that we see on the news that's national, kind of, or not even national, just statewide or whatever. But it's always like the FBI that gets the highlight, or the people that are the spokesmen are the special agents, and so forth, and which is cool. But they sort of fly under the wire. They don't even care about getting credit or not, but they're always there. And the more you start watching the news with that in mind, you start seeing their flak jackets that say U.S. Marshals on the back, or they don't always. Sometimes they say police or whatever. But it's just interesting how they're not about that. So it's fun for me to really lean into that and find out, who are you chasing and what's going on, and what's really happening. It's a fascinating arm of the law enforcement for sure.
Did you ever watch the In Plain Sight TV show? Did you ever see that one?
Yes.
I don't know if you thought, did you think that was fairly realistic and good? I
I
mean, I've
think,
got a little more personal stuff in it. You always have to have the family drama and stuff.
well,
Which,
yeah, exactly. I think that, in as much as that we all have to take literary license to make a complete story,
yeah,
yeah, I think they're pretty, they lean on. The other thing was I have WITSEC.
right.
So
What's
one of
that?
my
Yeah.
readers, one of my readers is a retired U.S. Marshal, and he wrote to me and he's like, "I'm really looking forward to your next book, WITSEC. I can't wait to see." And I'm like, "Oh no," because I'm gonna fall on my face. And he wrote back and he said I really enjoyed it. He said there were a couple of things that weren't correct. He goes, but I can't tell you what they were because that is like mom is the word. They don't. There's not a
Secret.
lot about it. They don't. Because they
Right.
for necessary reasons they need to keep it under wraps what they do. But I was just he was cracking me up. But but he likes to. I'm honored that he likes to read my books. That he my husband's a pilot, and he hates to watch anything that shows airline stuff because it's always completely wrong, and so it made me feel like, oh, he's gonna find all the things that were wrong, but he enjoyed it, so that made me feel pretty good.
Well, law stuff is always exaggerated quite a bit too. The lawyers.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if we put it exactly the way it is all the time, it'd be kind of like watching paint dry in some cases,
Right.
especially in law, where 90% of it is paperwork and motions and
Hmm.
this and that, the meaty stuff is
Yeah, and same with
we
U.S.
were
Marshals.
watching.
Most of their work is hunting,
Right.
these fugitives down online through a paper trail. So that's
Right.
not really very interesting.
Right. Yeah. They're not sitting in the car driving around town, hoping they're going to see him. Right. I think that might be him.
There he
Right.
is.
There he is. He just walked right in front of my car. Yeah. Yeah. When you only have a 40-minute show, that might happen, right? But in real life,
Right,
it takes a little
right.
bit more. Yeah, I have WITSEC
Exactly.
in my Divine Devil series as well. So I do have a witness protection person. I'm sure I got it completely wrong as well, but it was
That's
still,
all right. We do the best we can with what we have.
that's right. Yeah. You research it, what you know and what you can find out. So you
Right.
mentioned, so some of your characters do cross over in your series as well, in the various series, or are they all different universes?
It's not a different universe at all. And they do cross over. So like I said, the first series, the Flint River series, leads into the FBI Canine series, which leads into the Tin Star Canine series. And then so the FBI agent in Mile High Mayhem, which is book number 4, is the son of this family in Wyoming. So he works in Denver, but his family is in Wyoming. And so of course they see each other and occasionally. Not a lot. It's not
Right.
a lot. Like you could actually maybe even read, I have to say, her brother who lives, like I kind of have to
Right.
lead the reader a little bit because chances are they never did read Mile High Mayhem and they've started with Tin Star or whatever. So, and then the Dirk Sterling character, he shows up in mid series because he's how my protagonist Caitlin gets involved in the U.S. Marshals at all. So she's a sheriff's deputy at the time, and then he talks to her about becoming U.S. Marshal, and so they work together in several of the books after that in that series until he had to have his own series. And then they still see each other, which is kind of confusing, I think, for my readers sometimes because I'm like, he talks about his friend Caitlin, and they go shooting together. Like they always they'll go to the range together sometimes, and just kind of cross over as friends. But they haven't worked together since he had his new series. So he has his own sidekick.
So, is there a book that you want to write that you haven't written yet? I always like to ask people that. Maybe something in a different genre, been burning a hole in your head, or maybe you already wrote that. I know you mentioned the one that you pulled down that was women's fiction, but
Yeah.
anything else
So
that,
yeah, in the process of learning how to write, I was in a critique group, which for new writers I cannot recommend more highly. Is to be a part of a group of people who are all striving to write and learn how to do this thing. And if there's a little, some people who have a little more experience, it's such a great field of learning. But anyway, I wrote a book called From Germany with Love that is, it's a book about my heritage. So I have my German side of the family emigrated around the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century, and my Scottish side immigrated a little, maybe about 10 years later. And I've written these two sides of the family, and it's fictional, but it's based on truth and how they come together in the end. It's rough draft in the drawer, never to be seen kind of a thing, but it won't leave me alone. I really want to, someday I'll write that. And
Yeah,
I'm glad that I have the experience now because it's probably horrible. I don't even think it ever came to an end. I think that's why I never did anything with it. But, and then I started writing crime, and I love writing crime fiction and thrillers, but I want to write that. So someday I'll write it and just publish it, and just because,
just for the heck of it. Yeah. Well, when
and for
you're
family and for my kids, because the stories are a lot of fun. There's stories they've heard growing up, from our family. So it's just kind of fun to flesh it out a little bit into,
sure,
it's fiction for sure, but yeah,
family memento.
right.
So I always ask everybody this, and we're getting up here about almost an hour now, but the name of the program is Bringing Life to Characters. So I always ask authors, what is it you do to get those characters to jump off the page? What's your secret? Tell us the magic that you do to whip out, because you've obviously got a lot of characters, you've got a lot of books, so you can't use the same five guys in every book. You got to have some supporting cast, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it might sound a little weird maybe to say that, but I'm in a different place. I'm sure you are too as a writer. When you're writing, you're in a different place. You're in the zone, or there's, in the, however people want to call it. But I'm in that place with them, and so they're real people in my mind, and so they become real people on the page. I think it's more like you're just taking notes about what's happening rather than you go back and polish your sentences and you fix all that, the mechanics of it, but the actual guts of the story happen almost like a movie in my head, and I'm just taking the notes. So I think that's what maybe makes them the most real. Like I said, with dialogue, when they start taking off on this, if there's an argument or something and they go off, and there's this whole argument, it's like dialogue seems to be something that I don't really struggle with dialogue. And I think, that some people really do and some people don't. I'm one who doesn't. I don't really struggle with that because I'm just recording what's happening in my head.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, that's the best way I can answer that, I think.
So are any of the characters in your books based on real people?
They all have character traits of people that I know and love, or not if they're villains. Maybe it's somebody I don't know and love, or I know but don't love. My main character in the Tin Star series is inspired by my youngest daughter. She is not my youngest daughter at all, but my youngest daughter she's just a spitfire. She is such a strong, she's very strong. She has firm opinions. She has no problems communicating how she feels. And she is not afraid to get right up at you, if she feels like she needs to. She's beautiful and she's sweet and thoughtful and she's just a really interesting person. And I think that starting out, that's where my character kind of had her foundations. Since then, of course, she's become her whole own, entirely own person. But I think that, and I put a lot of my husband's idiosyncrasies in all of my male characters just for fun. So just because I like it when he reads it and then he laughs because he knows it's him. Like there's the one, the husband who's, so my Tin Star series, it's mostly about Caitlin and her dog Renegade, but her husband is the sheriff in their small town in Wyoming. So oftentimes he has his own crime to figure out. And but he has this thing where he goes in and he wants his French fries hot, and if they're not hot, he'll send them back. And whenever he says that, that's how he orders it, because that's how my husband orders his fries. And so it's just those little fun things. And I like to put those in because it's fun for people who, my kids all pick those things out, of course, and they think it's funny. And it's just anybody who knows us, can see those things. But of course, that character isn't my husband at all, so it's
Right.
just those little Easter egg kind of things that you get to put in there for fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if he reads and he sees those things. So yes,
Yeah.
that's good. My wife doesn't usually read my stuff, so she doesn't see the stuff I put in about her. So shh. Actually, I don't really too much. I'm sure there's some things in there. Uh,
Sure.
So you already mentioned a little bit about critique groups, but what else? What other suggestions you give for aspiring authors other than you're insane to do this?
Well, it's a lot of work, right? It's a
Yeah,
lot of work. So unless you're really dedicated to kind of being a slave to yourself and a slave to your work,
yeah,
you need to go into it knowing that it's a lot of work and a lot of dedication, but it's also the best job in the whole world, right? You get to play in your imagination and as indie authors for sure, because we have only ourselves to be, responsible to and our readers, but, we set our own deadlines and that kind of thing. So that makes that nice.
I
But
always, I always wanted to write books too, even since I was a kid. That was kind of one of
that's
those
cool.
things. And I
Yeah.
don't like guns. I'm not a big gun guy, but I like writing about people using guns sometimes, which is kind of weird. But that's the way I get my gun thrills instead.
There
When
you
I'm
go.
around a real gun, I get a little nervous. I don't really like them that much. But so how about
Well,
marketing?
I'm a Marine wife, so I can't say that.
Well, yeah, you're
You know,
so any marketing tips you like to give people? Being
oh
especially
gosh,
being indie because you don't have anybody taking care of that. You got to do everything yourself or pay people to do it for you.
you do. Marketing is my least favorite thing to do, but it
Yeah,
must be done.
tell me.
Um, and I have luck with Amazon ads particularly, and Facebook currently is not really working very well, but it has in the past, and I think it will again when they work out whatever bugs are going on. Um, I've tried all sorts of things. The best thing you can do is your newsletter, is your email list.
Mhm.
These tend to be your readers who want to hear from you, and they want to know what you've got going on, and they want to know what deals you have or new books you have. And it's fun to create that environment and that community. But those three things to me are the things that work, and everything else for me has been a waste of time and money. So that's just me though. I mean, everybody needs to figure out for themselves, but that's what works for me.
A lot of trial and error.
A lot of trial and error.
And
And there's
Amazon
always
ads for
something
me,
new.
Amazon
Yeah.
ads for me have never worked.
Yeah.
All I do
Right.
is
I've heard
burn
that
through
too.
money. I
Hmm.
don't know why. I've never
Yeah.
had a lot of luck with them. I get clicks, but nobody buys. Maybe
Right.
my covers are not good enough for something. I mean, there's a lot of different
No,
things.
I've seen your covers. That's not it.
Yeah,
You've got great covers. Yeah. Yeah.
something. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll here wind up. So I gotta get your banner up here so people can see your website. So what events do you got? Oh, that's not it. That's the sample one. I don't want the sample one. Get the right one.
I'm impressed with whatever you're doing.
That was the ticker tape one that kind of goes across the stream, but there was nothing on there other than say this is a demonstration, which doesn't really tell people much. So what events you got coming up? Any other stuff you're going to be doing the rest of the year? You did Left Coast
Um,
Crime.
yeah, not really. I just did an author talk in our town in Woodland Park, which was really fun. And I have books coming out. Witsec just came out in March, and I have Detonate coming out in October. But other than that, I'm just doing personal travel this year. I was going to go to, I was all signed up to go to BoucherCon. And then then we planned a trip with some friends right over the top of it. And I was like, oh, good heavens. So anyway, I'm not going this year to BoucherCon, although I really want to, and I will go the following year. That's a good one. I really
Well,
like
I'll
it.
be in Calgary. We'll see what the border stuff is like then.
Yeah, right. We'll see if they'll let us in. If they'll
Yeah,
let us in, we'll go.
we'll see how that goes and stuff. Yes, I wanted to do BoucherCon this year, but it's not going to work for me either because Michael Conley was going to be there, and I would
Right.
love to talk with him. And I hear he's a really nice guy, easy to talk to. So
And I missed last year's, who was Brad Thor was the keynote speaker, who I
yeah,
love Brad Thor too, which I should say, that's another person I read all of. I love Brad Thor. So
Yes, Brad was there. I mean, there's a lot of good. I also do Killer Nashville every year too, so I'll be going back this year. But that one, they were back to back last year in Nashville, which.
yeah, yeah.
But
And I
you,
ended up going to Killer Nashville, and it was okay, but I wish I would have gone to BoucherCon.
yeah, Killer's more of a learning conference. It's not
Yeah,
really a fan conference. BoucherCon's more of a fan
more of a
conference.
fan.
There's some
Yeah,
learning involved, but
yeah.
yeah, Clay runs a great. And if you want to learn, I tell people, yeah, Killer Nashville's a great one to go to. But last year, you didn't. One thing you didn't miss was how hot it was. Oh my gosh, it was so hot there.
Oh, really?
It was over 100 degrees 3 days in a row there in Nashville in August and humid. And even people who live there said this is way hotter than it normally is. So, but I've been there other years where it does nothing but rain too. So I guess you can't. So,
Right. And so we're going this weekend to Nashville
are you?
to, yeah, to hook up with some friends we met at Killer Nashville.
Oh,
So that's kind of fun. Yeah, we're going to go for a crawfish boil at their place this year. It's just
authors?
sort of a, uh, yes, but nonfiction.
Oh, okay. I don't know
Yeah, I
if I
think it
would
was
know
just,
who
she
they
was
were.
just there. Honore Corder, do you know her?
I don't
She
know.
has a whole slew of nonfiction books about writing, and they're fantastic. So, little plug for Honore Corder is her name. Yeah.
Well, she'll have to do a seminar there or something and give away sell tickets and
Absolutely.
get people to learn all their secrets, huh? And buy her
Right.
book. All right, so people can find you at this, and you have a
Yes,
bookshop as well. I notice you
I
have like
do.
signed books, people
Hmm.
you can order on there, which is
Yep. And
nice.
there's some merchandise. I have some art by author merchandise. So I'm an artist as well, and so I've done some different art, primarily a drawing of my dog Renegade. So he's the big star. So I drew him, and there's some stuff on there you can look at. So that's kind of fun. It's just another fun thing to do when you're not writing.
Yeah, well, yeah, can't write every hour of every day, I suppose. Little carpal tunnel, wrist
Right.
hurts are hurt from typing and everything. So, was there anything else we wanted to cover? We're
I
about
don't
an
think so.
hour and 6 minutes.
Other than I didn't really finish answering your question for new writers, I wanted to say about getting involved with a writing community. So for me, it was Rocky Mountain fiction writers, but there's generally every state, big cities have something like that. Sisters in Crime has chapters all over. It's so important to be in a community of some sort, just for support and to know you're not out there alone. Writing is a lonely sport, and it's good to have people like yourself who we get together and encourage each other as writers.
Yeah, and most writers are very accommodating. I mean,
Yeah,
even the well-known ones are usually have no problem come up and
I've
talk to
found
me.
that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Other than maybe they got to go. I got to get to my next thing, but I can meet you for a beer later and stuff. So
Yeah,
all those
exactly.
things. So yeah, they're so yes, that's always good advice for those that have that passion. As I tell most people, do it because you want to do it and you love it, as you said,
Yeah.
but don't expect to necessarily make a ton of money at it. If you're lucky
Right.
enough to make money, great, but it can be a struggle sometimes. Independent is nice because we pretty much get to keep it all ourselves. Though Amazon takes way more money than I wish they did sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's what, being able to sell direct, which is kind of this sort of craze going on with, especially with indie authors. But the beauty of it is you can charge less and make more. So everybody benefits, your reader benefits and you benefit. So it's one of the good things about being able to do a direct shop. That's just been coming online over the last several years that people are doing that.
and
And
do you print through KDP or do you go to Ingram Micro or
on my bookshop, it's through Book Vault,
Book Vault?
which
Okay.
is actually a British company, but they're hooked in with Shopify, and so that works out really well. But primarily, my biggest selling stuff on my shop are my audiobooks because I can bundle them and sell them for way less than Audible,
Well,
or and even Chirp will sell them, and so and it's a great deal. So that's the best kind of deal you can do on your shop is and that's for any author that is having a shop out. They probably have audio. If you're an audio listener, look for your author's own shop, and you can usually get a much better deal than you can anywhere else.
so can you still have them on Audible and still sell them?
Yes, as long as you're not exclusive to Audible.
Oh,
So that's the key. And so, for example, my U.S. Marshals, I'm getting ready to put that entire series on my shop, and I'll bundle it so I can sell it for a really good deal. And but I had to notify ACX or Audible that I
right.
wanted to remove the series from exclusivity, and then of course your royalty percentage goes down and everything else.
Of
But
course.
yeah, but honestly, I make that up pretty quickly on my
Oh,
shop
yeah.
because
Right.
it's a better deal for the readers. Yeah.
I will have to look into that myself because, yeah,
Yeah, and you
I
don't have
don't
to have a
sell,
subscription or anything. You
yeah,
just, it's
I
just
don't
easy.
sell a lot of
Yeah.
audiobooks, but I do have a few, but they can
Yeah.
be
I
kind of.
bet you would
Have
if you
you
had them
used
through a
similar
shop.
narrators for your books?
Do I have the same narrator? Is that what you asked
Yeah,
me?
have you kind of had different ones through the years,
I've
or?
had different ones for sure.
Yeah.
I started out my FBI Canine series starts with one lady, and then I have a different narrator for the last three, and then a new narrator for my 10-star series, all the way up till this last book, Spec Ops. My sweet narrator, and she's fantastic, but she decided to become a nurse, and she's got two little kids, and she's like, I don't have time.
Yeah.
So I had to find a new narrator. I did, and I really like her. But I'll tell you, the guy who does my narration for my U.S. Marshal series, and he did my Flint River series, so it's the male voices.
Right.
He is so awesome. First of all, I love his voice. He is the best Dirk Sterling ever. But not just that, he's Irish, and he does all these accents because
Okay.
I send my marshal. He's the first one. Extraction is an international crime thing. So he is traveling, there's Turkey and then Brazil, and they're in Mexico, and then they're in Canada, and then they're in New York, and he even does different New York accents that I didn't even ask him to do, and they're spot on. The only funny thing is he says American words, because they're both English, but they don't always say the same word. Like I'm reading along with him one time, and he says "Quonset hut," and I'm like, "Quonset hut? What is a Quonset hut?" It was a Quonset hut, so I had to. That was my. I'm like, Nick, I need you to change this to Quonset,
Yeah.
and then you have to try to phonetically spell it because it's all email.
Right. Right.
But he's fantastic. So I'm really excited about him.
Right. Well, we will wrap up here.
All right.
I appreciate you being on. Enjoyed talking to you, listening to you. I definitely learned a few things myself tonight, which is part of the reason why I do this show because it's always fun
Good.
with
Yeah.
authors.
It's
And
good to see you.
yeah, it's good seeing you. I enjoyed talking with you at Left Coast. Never enough time. There's always so many people there and so many
Right.
people to talk to, but that's part of the fun of that. But maybe
It was
we will
nice that it
see.
was in Denver this year.
Yeah, next year San Francisco. We haven't decided if we're going to go or not. We're kind of holding out. My wife's involved in this great big project at work, and it's
Oh yeah.
difficult for her to get away right now. And we'll see how it goes. And she likes to travel. I don't generally like to travel alone. I'm going to go to Killer Nashville with my daughter this year, which she
Oh
went from a
fun.
couple years ago. So she'll have some fun. She gets to see a little bit of Nashville while I'm stuck inside listening to people talk. But that's okay. But great. I appreciate it. Again. Great having you on.
Thank you.
I
It's fun to be here.
I may reach out to you about. I do an author profile in my newsletter, and I'm looking for someone for this month. So I might
Sure.
reach out to you and have you send me some stuff that I can throw in at the towards the end of my newsletter, and maybe get some
Awesome.
people.
Thank you. We should do a swap.
Yeah, we can do that anytime. Always, but I always like to promote authors, and that's kind of why I did this show too, to promote authors. And then I will contact you later, and I'll put you backstage here, and I'll say goodbye to everybody and stuff. If you want to hang around, you can, but I'll
Sure.
contact you with the link and stuff for the show and all.
Okay.
So, but thanks again. I appreciate you being on, and
Thank you.
enjoy your dogs, and don't let the cows drive you too nuts.
I'll try.
Okay.
All right. Take care, Andy.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. Didn't have any comments tonight. I did see a few people popping in and out at times. So hopefully you enjoyed the show. I'll let everyone know my dog book. If I can find it here. There it is. If I can click on it. There we go. My Canine, Justice for the Forgotten, the Steel Wheels Cold Mystery. That's my tattoo that I just got. And you see I've got a Belgian Malinois on there. he did a great job. It's still healing. It's just got it done about a week ago, so it's still sore. But that's my book again, Colorado. A lot of it takes place in Walsenburg and a fictional town, Real Celeste, with some bad people. So I hope you'll check that out. Been getting great reviews. Thanks, everyone. Next week, I'll have Aaron Philip Clark on. He's a gritty crime novelist, a little bit in the Bosch realm, Los Angeles. I had a chance to read one of his books, and they're very intense. So it's going to be fun talking with him. But I sat at his table at Left Coast Crime and didn't get a chance to talk to him until the very end because it was so loud in there I couldn't hear anything. But thanks, everyone. We will see you next Monday night is when we will have on.